A very good morning to all. Today I am going to discuss about disaster management. It's an open elective subject and it is given for third year BTech second semester, and the subject code is 23A016GT for academic year 25-26, and I am Dr. Naresh Kumar, Associate Professor in Civil Engineering Department, Annamacharya Institute of Technology and Sciences, Rajampet. So in this disaster management, we'll study about all types of disasters which are occurring in natural things, and let me see about the unit-wise things. When you see about the first unit, these are introduction to natural disasters. So in this introduction to natural disaster, then the second topic is brief introduction to different types of natural disasters, then occurrence of disasters in different climatic and geographical regions, and hazard maps. In that we'll find out this earthquake and cyclone of the world and India, regulations for disaster risk reduction, post-disaster recovery and rehabilitation. In that we will study about socio-economic consequences. So when you come to this disaster management, the very first thing, introduction to natural disasters, it means like natural disasters is a severe and sudden event caused by natural process of the earth that results in the loss of human life, the damage of property and infrastructure, then environmental degradation and disruption of natural life and economic activities. The main important concept of this is a natural event becomes a disaster only when it affects human society and exceeds the community and ability to scope. The difference between a hazard and disaster, these are the two things that are there. When you see the aspects, the meaning of hazard and disaster means it is a potential threat. In the hazard, when you talk about the disaster, it is actual damage. So let me give a best example related to this hazard and disaster. When a explosion happens in a desert, that is no loss of human life or no loss of animals or no loss of anything is called as hazard. When you talk about disaster, when an explosion is done in a very public places where the people are more number of living people are there, then that is called a damage of the living things or living organisms or the man who are there. So those are called actual damage. The huge loss which is like the living beings, like people who are there. Then when you talk about the infrastructure, then the economy of that particular country, these three are more damaged, then definitely it's called as a disaster. So this is the meaning of that. When you talk about meaning, the potential threat and the hazard, then when you talk about disaster, it is the actual damage which is caused, which is like a scalable, which is measurable. These are the example. One is earthquake fault line under hazard. When you talk about disaster, it is like Bhuj earthquake, which is occurred in 2001 in Gujarat. These are the impact may or may not cause losses in the hazard. When you talk about disaster, this is a cause where large scale of losses which are. Let me give you an example on that. I said earlier we discussed about the example also. An earthquake in an uninhabited desert is a hazard, but the same earthquake in a city is a disaster. So that is the thing which we can see. Let me talk about the introduction of natural disasters. What are the natural disasters? A natural disaster is a catastrophic event caused by natural process of the earth that results in loss of life, property damage and environmental degradation and socio-economic disruptions. These are the things that if it is damaged totally, it is called as natural disaster. A hazard becomes a disaster when it affects vulnerable populations without adequate preparedness and mitigations. Then these are the types of natural disasters. There are 4 types of natural disasters which broadly classified. The very first thing, geological disasters. In that, the very first thing, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, then landslides, tsunamis, which comes under geological disasters. When you talk about hydrological, meteorological disasters, these are the cyclones which are occurred, hurricanes you can say, typhoons, then floods, cloudbursts, storm surges. These are the 4 types of hydro-meteorological disaster which are occurred under category B. Then when category C, when you talk about climatological disasters, the droughts which are there where there is no water and it is dry areas, you can say. In that you will find out the heat waves also, then cold waves in the polar regions which are there, and forest fires. Best example for forest fires where Los Angeles has happened, a very huge loss of this thing. Then when you talk about biological disasters, these are the epidemics, then pandemics and pest infestations. These are the 4 types of natural disasters which are occurred, and it may be classified into 5 types. So geophysical category, if you talk, the examples, best examples which are that earthquake, landslides, avalanches, then volcanic eruptions are the best example for that. The description for the geophysical is caused by movements of Earth's crust and slopes. The second one, hydrological disaster which are occurred, which is the best example for that is floods and tsunamis which are occurred. The description for that is caused by, it causes by excessive water movement or levels. So as we know, we have seen so many things like which the tsunami occurs in 2004 where Kanyakumari got tsunami, very huge loss of human life which is there. Then meteorological disasters, the examples for that is hurricanes, cyclones, storms, blizzards. So when you talk about the description, it relates to extreme weather and atmospheric disturbances. Then climatological disasters, when you talk about this, the best examples are heat waves where we will find out in the drought areas, and cold waves where we find out in the polar regions like North Pole and the Arctic and Antarctic regions. Then droughts, you can see droughts also. Wildfires, just now we given a best example related to that, and description for that, it's like result prolonged extreme temperature and precipitation defected. And biological, it comes as epidemics where insects or animals plagues which are like so many things which are seen past years also. And it involves widespread diseases or rapidly population growth of harm organisms. So almost we have seen a corona which has been given a best example for biological disasters. Then next one, we'll see the classification of natural disasters. Just now we have seen number of things which are there with the best examples of geological disasters. The examples of Bhuj earthquake which is occurred in Gujarat in 2001, volcanic eruptions with Mount vice versa Italy, and landslides which are occurred in Uttarakhand, or it may be like Kerala also, where slope failures in 2018 in Kerala. And tsunamis, undersea earthquake, Indian Ocean tsunami in 2004, I said about the Kanyakumari tsunami is the best example. And you can see the disasters for the geophysical where earthquake has happened. When the Richter scale intensity is more than like 5, then definitely the infrastructure and the living people who are there, it gets more damage. And these are the few photographs related to that geophysical and these things. And when you talk about the volcanic eruptions, these are the volcanic eruptions which are occurred. So where huge magma comes from the earth crust and it goes there, and finally it goes from kilometers also, there we get as volcanic eruptions. And these are the landslides which are occurred where we find like Kerala will have very good landslides where the valleys are very high. And if you see the Uttarakhand, there also we will find last year we found out this Badrinath places we got lost a lot of huge damage for the landslides. And you can see the northeastern states or eastern states, you can see all the like Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Meghalaya, so many places which we can find out these kind of landslides more. And once the tsunami came here, these are the hydrological figures which are append. And these are the cyclones for low pressure system with strong winds, cyclone Fani, which is occurred in 2019. The floods, excess water inundation, where Assam floods like annually, which we are faced, there cloudburst which is occurred very popularly in Uttarakhand places in 2013, very massive damage which has happened, sudden intense of rainfall, that is called as cloudburst. And these are the floods that are happened to the villages or climatic conditions which we can see these kind of photographs. So climatological disasters where drought or prolonged rainfall deficiency where the northward drought we can see, and heat waves, extreme temperatures, heat waves, just now I have given a best examples in Rajasthan, and forest fire, dry climate ignition, where Australian bush fires also which has happened, and these are the drought we can see areas which are happened, and these are the firefighting places which we can see. When you talk about occurrence of disasters in different climatic and geographical regions, natural disasters are not uniform disturbed across the globe. Their occurrence depends on climate, geology, latitude and topography. We'll see about the disaster based on climatic reasons. Topographical reasons, there we find out so many cyclones, floods, heat waves which are there. Arid regions, there we find out droughts and dust storms. Then temperature regions, which we found out storms or floods. In polar regions, avalanches and ice storms, we can see like Arctic and Antarctic regions, which just now I said about that. So cyclones frequently occurred in Bay of Bengal due to warm sea surface temperature. That is the best example. When you talk about disaster based on geophysical features, the geophysical feature which depends on plate boundaries. So the types of disaster which occur are earthquakes and volcanoes. Then coastal areas, when you talk about this, the disaster types are cyclones and tsunamis. River basins are floods. Then when you talk about mountain regions, these are the landslides and avalanches which are there. So these are the coastal areas where the written periods where the hurricanes, like if you see the red color, like 5 to 7 intensity it is there. Then when you talk about this yellow color, we'll find out 8 to 11 it is there. Then so many are there. By seeing this figure you can find out all the information related to the coastal areas. So this is a key idea related to this geographical decades where disaster occurred, climate decide how often it is. So by seeing this figure you will get it. And the third one, hazard maps, where earthquake and cyclones which occurred. What is a hazard map? A hazard map shows one is disaster prone regions, then what is the intensity levels which are there, then frequency of occurrence also you can see. So where the uses of that hazard map is, one is urban planning, second one is safe construction, and third one is disaster preparedness. These are the uses that comes under hazard maps. Then earthquake hazard map world, this comes under Pacific Ring of Fire, then Himalayan belt. These are the two things. So when you come to India, India is divided into 4 seismic zones as per IS 1893. Zone 2, it's a very low risk where earthquake is very less there. Zone 3, it is moderate risk. Then Zone 4, high risk. Then Zone 5, very high risk. So Zone 5, you can see where the places is Kashmir, North India, Northeastern India. Then Zone 2, Southern Peninsular India. These are the two places which is the best examples for that. So when you see global seismic hazard map, where the intensity, if you see the red colors, the intensity of this earthquake is very high, where the green color it is, the intensity is very less. These are the two things you can find out from this world map. When you talk about Indian map, let me zoom it. So here zone 2 is the light color which is there, that is the least earthquake zone which is there. When you talk about zone 5, this is the highest place where earthquake, I said about the eastern states where the earthquakes also it is more there. These are the places you can find out the earthquake very high. So you should know these are the places, which zones, which places we need to go or which we need to get it. The cyclone hazard map, east coast. So east coast it comes around here. So here this place, east coastal region, high risk, like Orissa is the best place for east coast. So if we talk about India map, east coast is the place where this place, no, this is the Orissa where we get it now. The western coast moderate risk will be there. When you talk about Gujarat, here there is very less compared to this point, no. So cyclone Amphan affects Orissa and West Bengal severely due to coastal exposure. So very huge exposure it is there for the coastal area. So that's what most area of this thing, Orissa and West Bengal. So that affects to the people and living human beings which are there. And when you talk about this India, the coastal region which starts from this border, Gujarat starting point up to this point, it goes like this. And finally, this is the total surface coastal area which is exposed to the water, and where the very high prone areas, the red color which shows the very high prone areas, and blue color it shows high prone, and moderately prone which is shown on the green color, and less prone it is like a yellow color which is there. It is away from the coasters, just near to coastal also you can say. So these are the regulations for disaster risk reduction. The very first one, disaster risk reduction, DRR. It focuses on reducing vulnerability and exposure. The main components of disaster risk reduction is risk assessment we need to analyze. The second one is early warning systems you should see. So we should give like the yellow line, yellow signal or orange signal, red signal. These are the three things that will be shown to the and we'll give SOS messages to all the people who are living aside of coastal areas. Then land use planning also. Then building codes which are there. Then when you talk about international framework, Sendai framework which done in 2015 to 2030 by United Nations Office for disaster risk reduction. The priority areas which are there, like understanding disaster risk, the very first one. The second one is strengthening governance. Then third one is investing in resilience. And the fourth one is preparedness and recovery. These are the four things which are there for priority areas. And this is about the disaster management in India. So one act it is introduced in disaster management in India, Disaster Management Act 2005. And second one is NDMA, National Disaster Management Authority. So what they do, these people they will be initiating to the state disaster management authority, and state disaster management they depend upon the district disaster management authority. So they collect the data from each and every district. From there it sends to the state, and finally it reaches to the National Disaster Management Authority. So the third one is state and district authorities. When you talk about early warning systems for tropical cyclones, these are the things which are there. The very first thing, when you talk about green signal, there is no hazard. The yellow signal if you show, so this is the caution which is given to all the public. Tropical cyclone process possible threat within next 120 hours. So yellow signal gives like this. When you talk about orange, so prepare yourself, tropical cyclone conditions are possible within next 48 hours, that will be shown. When you talk about red signal, you should protect yourself. So the tropical cyclone conditions are expected within next 36 hours. Then the strike means the total cyclone comes to the coastal areas. Tropical cyclone conditions are imminent within next 6 hours. So these are the information that are given to the National Disaster Management Authority. So these are the signals that will be given for that. Or it may be like it may be reflects to the earthquake also. If you see the example of that, earthquake resistant building in zone 5 reduces collapse risk also. So the main thing you should understand about this, once the disaster happens, we will go for post disaster recovery and rehabilitation. The phases after disaster, very first thing, once the disaster happens, very first thing we should take about like emergency response. So Natural Disaster Management Authority people, they react for that, and that people they give the information to the State Disaster Management Authority, and State Disaster Management Authority they gives information to the District Disaster Management Authority. So these people they go and they react for that, and who are the people living there, they will get help from the National Disaster Management Authority people. So the emergency response is very much required, and relief for the people who are suffered with the disaster, and disaster recovery after 1 day, 2 days, how much recovery they have been done, and we need to see about the rehabilitation. So total infrastructure was damaged, there is no homes for that due to the disaster which has occurred. After disaster, the post-disaster recovery, we need to do the rehabilitation for that, and finally reconstruction of that places where the people they don't have any houses, we need to take it out for them, and finally people, they need to have shelter and food and all things. So these are the 5 things that should be taken for post disaster recovery and rehabilitation. When you talk about socio-economic consequences in social, very first thing, displacement of people. The second one is loss of education. Then third one, psychological trauma. So the very first thing, we need to take it out all the things like this and give awareness to the people. Once it is like economic, the infrastructure damage should be taken care, and second one is jobless, it will be there, and third one is increased poverty. So these 3 things are the main key role for the development of the country. Once disaster happens, these 3 will be damaged, and we need to take care about that also. When you talk about environmental, one is soil erosion will be occurred for that. Then second one is water pollution will be occurred. Then third one is habitat loss also, it will be occurred. So when you take an example of 2004 tsunami, the fishing communities lost living livelihoods for years also. So almost they have been taken all the JCBs and dig all the pits, and they are thrown like this. So they have been suffered a lot, and these are the best examples for that, how disaster situation will be there, and how to recover within this. When you talk about a few days, so this is the recovery, emergency shelters is required, and temporary shelters also it is required for that, and 6 months so temporary housing is required for them, and finally permanent housing has to be done for them. So disaster situation should be taken care in this way. So first and foremost thing, we need to give enhancing the culture adequacy. So people has to know about that, and these are the temporary structures that are happened for the people, like containers they will be taking care, and finally in that they give the shelters also. You can see the examples of these people, temporary structures which are there. Within short time they can take it and they can give shelter for the people who are there, which is suffered for the, which is done for the disaster. So this is one more photograph which is shown for after disaster, post disaster recovery, which their people are doing. And rehabilitation measures, we need to see resettlement housing. So how much damage it has happened, and we need to take it out what resettlement of housing we should be done. Livelihood restoration. So people, what the people they are working, and for them what things has to be taken care, we need to take care. And health and counseling services also you should see. So after disaster there are a lot of diseases that are going to widely spread also surrounding people. So for that, what are the remedies we need to take? In that, what type of diseases that are occurred within short time. So for that, you need to take the health and counseling services of the public who are face the disaster. And disaster resilience reconstruction also, it is very most important for the public who have faced the disaster. And when you talk about the concept related to that, build back better. Earlier how they were, and after disaster we need to take the same thing to the people, and with a safer and sustainable development. So then only the country gets developed. So these are the major tracks and frequencies of hurricanes and typhoons which are occurred throughout the world. And if you see in North America, these are the hurricanes that are happened and typhoons that are happened. So if you talk about, see in the June and October, these North America which is faced, and when you talk about North America in the east side, so August and October, these are the way of these things. And when you talk about June and November, the Asian countries like India, these things places very huge things, no? And June to December here you will see, find out here. And Australia you can find January and March, people will face this kind of hurricanes. So these are the things that should be taken care. And this is regions with high exposure plus high vulnerability. It gives like high disaster risk. Okay. So thank you for listening for the very first unit, Introduction to Natural Disasters. There are more things like this. So I thank each and everyone for watching this. Thank you.